Good afternoon to our viewers in Germany and good morning to our viewers in the United States. I'm Steve Sokol, the president of the American Council on Germany, and I am delighted to welcome you to the 11th edition in our virtual series, State to State German-American State Legislator Dialogue. We are very pleased at the ACG to continue this collaboration with Aspen, Germany. Both organizations have recognized the increasing role of subnational actors, such as states, regions, and cities, when it comes to addressing common issues and common challenges. And both organizations have conducted a range of programs and activities focused on the subnational level. I think it's fair to say that we both believe that it's critical, absolutely critical, to engage decision makers and opinion leaders at the state and local level in dialogue across the Atlantic. And that's exactly what we're trying to do with this series. The State to State series provides a platform for substantive discussions at the subnational level by hosting German and American state legislators on a broad audience to talk about common transatlantic challenges. And one of those challenges, indeed one of the most pressing challenges, is migration and immigration policy. And so I am very much looking forward to today's discussion. We are very happy that so many of you registered for today's event and have tuned in. And I am delighted now to turn things over to Stormy Miltner. She's the director of the Aspen Institute Germany, and she will moderate today's discussion. With that, Stormy, the floor is yours, and I look forward to a lively and engaging conversation.
Thank you so much, Steve. This is lovely, and I wasn't quite aware that it's already our 11th edition of State to State. That shows us not only that we have a long history of cooperation, but how important that topic is and how many topics we actually have to talk about on the state to state level cooperation. And as you have already mentioned, today we are looking at a particularly pressing issue, the issue of immigration, migration. And I think this topic couldn't be more relevant and also timelier as today. We all know yesterday was Super Tuesday in the United States, pivotal for the primary elections. And looking at the exit polls, we have seen that migration, immigration was really one of the top election issues and is going to remain so very, very likely. And today also in Berlin, the state presidents are meeting just around the corner here from the Aspen Institute at Friedrichstraße, right in the middle. And they are also talking about the topic of migration. And this shows that we not only have chosen the date of our meeting today, very timely, but it is just almost every day that we are talking about migration. Oftentimes, when we open the papers or hear those discussions, there's a lot of negative talk about migration and immigration. And thus, I want to remind us how important migration is for both of our countries on both sides of the Atlantic, and that it made us what we are today. The United States, obviously, as land of opportunities and a immigration country per excellence, but also for Germany, our economic miracle and reconstruction after World War II would not have been possible without the thousands of guest workers. And also today, our prosperity and economic growth depends to a certain degree on migration, especially given the demographic change we are currently witnessing. So migration is a huge opportunity for both of our countries. On the other side, it also poses a lot of challenges. And we are going to hear this from our two speakers, I'm pretty sure, and also in the discussion. It poses challenges with regard to integration, with regard to infrastructure, but also with regard to policy making, also on both sides of the Atlantic. And it can become very heated and very divisive election topics. We see that in the United States currently, but as we have our elections, also the parliamentary Bundestag elections around the corner next year, the debates are already heating up here as well. And we have a lot of state elections also coming up, and the elections to the European Parliament later on this year. So here as well, migration is an increasingly important political and also election issue. And I hope that we will be able to touch upon all these issues from a positive point of view, from a critical point of view, and that we also get to policy solutions for the national level, as well as the international transatlantic level. And I could not imagine two participants better equipped to do all of this with us. And that is Franziska Baum. Franziska is member of the parliament in Thuringia, and also one of our alumni of our Laboratories of Democracy initiative, where we looked at structural change. And I can say Franziska is known for her creative policy recommendations and solutions, and a true bridge builder. And another very true bridge builder, an important figure and an opinion leader with regard to the issue of migration is Brian Fernandez from the United States, member of the Arizona State Senate. And you can't see him yet, but he's certainly with us. He's just on the highway, quickly moving from home to the Senate because he has been called into session. And instead of canceling his participation to us, I'm very, very grateful that he made it possible to jump into the car, onto the highway, into the Senate, and then also joining us in the debate today. So Franziska and Brian, thank you for being here today. All right, so Steve already told us about the rules of the game. We will first discuss a little bit among our two speakers. Then I will open it up for the discussion. And please jump in and post your questions in the Q&A. And I will bring that into the conversation. And as Steve said, we want to make this as interactive as possible. So don't be shy and start jumping in as early as possible. So I would love to start with you, Franziska, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about your Bundesland and your district and how the situation currently is there with regard to migration.
Yeah, thank you very much, Stormy, and thank you for having me. As you said, migration is a really hard politics topic at the moment. It's on the one side very emotional amongst population, but it's also very emotional and controversial amongst politicians. I am member of the Liberal group, as you said already, and for them I'm responsible for the migration topic on our side. So I'm looking after the ministry so that they don't do too many mistakes there. On the state level, the possibility to act on legal to change the legal situation on migration is limited. So that's one of our problems. Let me put it that way, so that we just kind of put into place what is given by the federal government. But Thuringia is kind of special, I would say. We have a very big group of right-wing, extreme right parliamentarians in our state parliament. So the AfD is very strong here. And we have state elections in September. And as the polls are telling us at the moment, it looks as if they might get even stronger. So they influence the discussion, especially on that topic, very strongly, especially via social media, and they are very successful in spreading fake news to to enhance the very negative discussion on migration, which is a problem because on the other side, Thuringia is desperately looking for people who want to work with our very highly innovative companies who are looking for workers all over the world. And the more the discussion gets a negative side, the more people who are high potentials and who can look and go wherever they want, they will definitely not come to Thuringia. So that is kind of the controversy I'm working at in Thuringia.
So it's not an easy situation right now, as I would certainly imagine. Franziska, before I hand over to Brian, could you maybe also explain us a little bit about the responsibility and division of power, what the states do and what the federal government does, how much space you have as a state to move, and what you can decide on your own and where you have to coordinate with the other states and with the federal government?
Migration politics is really a lot of coordination with other levels. So the whole question on who is allowed to enter the country and who is allowed to do what, like, are they able to work? Do they get work permits? How long are they able to stay? All this is question that is regulated on the federal state level. So there is nothing we can actually do apart from small programs like the government in Thuringia has done the previous years. For example, for Afghanistan, when the problems increase in Afghanistan, to say if you come from Afghanistan, you've got a family there, and you are able to provide for them, then you can call them over so that they can stay with you. So, which is usually doesn't cost a lot of money for us as a state, but it also opens up discussions on the political level. That's for sure. The big challenge for us is that on a municipality level, all the work is done, if I put it that way. So the municipality, like the cities and the little Landkreise districts, they are responsible to find accommodation, to find schools, to find places in kindergartens, to do the integration work. And they are quite overwhelmed at the moment, not only due to the refugees coming due to the Ukrainian war, but also those numbers that have increased from other countries. So they are quite in a challenge. And if we can't, on a state level and also on the municipality level, we have no impact on the question how to keep people here, to allow them to work. So there's only we can only give them money and let them wait for a decision on a legal court basis or on their administrative process. So that is we are a bit handcuffed here. Yeah. And I forgot the EU. This one is coming in as well.
No, thank you so much. And I'm sure we come back also to Russia's war on Ukraine and how that played out with regard to refugees. Senator Brian, are you already in the office or are you still on the road?
I am pulling into the parking lot. So if you give me 3 minutes, I will be ready.
Okay. Well, then, Franziska, I'm not going to let you off the hook and ask you a follow-up question before I hand over to Brian. And maybe you can go back a couple of years to the beginning of Russia's war on Ukraine and when the first refugees came. How was the situation and how did your state manage this? And was there at any point a turning point, so to say, when also the welcoming atmosphere changed?
The atmosphere in Thuringia when the Ukrainian refugees came over Thuringia. A lot of them have connections here, family connections to people who live here. One of my staff members is Ukrainian and is a student in my hometown. So there are a lot of connections, and there were a lot of volunteering and voluntary help on providing help at the border, but also taking in people in private homes, helping getting sports halls open and make the big sleeping lot out of them. So there was a lot of help and very welcoming atmosphere. And I believe that the municipalities wouldn't have been able to actually provide for the Ukrainians that came that time if it wasn't for the volunteers, because they reacted far quicker than our administration. So that was a very good thing. And then at some point, when the decision was made on the EU level and also on the German level to kind of change the juridical situation of Ukrainians in Germany. You say it's a Regelkreiswechsel. Don't know what that is in English, but so it's like we moved them from one juridical rule setting into another, and put them on the same level as all those who are not in work here in Germany. So I hope this makes a little bit clear. And that became a problem when suddenly some of the Ukrainians went back home and still got money from here, and nobody was able to kind of follow that up. So this is when it started turning, and people started to ask questions, and we're not happy with what is happening here. Also, it was a bit naive to think that all of them would come here and then start working suddenly, and there would be no problem at all. Of course, there were language problems. Of course, some of them thought, well, we're only here for a couple of months and then we're going back, so why would I go look for work? So this was all a kind of chaotic situation, which made it quite difficult to keep up the on the one hand the administrative process, but also keeping people up in a positive attitude towards the refugees. But I would still say that there is a highly understanding and welcoming atmosphere. What you should not forget is that in East Germany we have a different connection to Ukraine and as well to Russia, which makes it on a political level, on a discussion about the war and how it's organized, and the role of the EU and Germany in that whole is a different topic altogether. So we have a lot of discussion on all different levels. But I know a lot of good stories about Ukrainian finding work here and being welcomed very openly.
No, thank you very much. And we will get back to the issue of the federal level and the state and the cost sharing and who does what a little bit later in our debate. But now I'm really happy to also bring in Brian, and I hope we can also now turn on your camera so that we bring you in visually. And there you are. So perfect. Thank you so much. And I have to say, you don't look stressed at all, which is amazing.
We're Americans. We're used to racing down the highway, so it's no big deal.
Okay. With this, I would like to jump from this side of the Atlantic over to the other side of the Atlantic. And I would like to ask you the same question which I asked Franziska. Tell us a little bit about your state and your district, and how the situation currently looks like with regard to migration and immigration.
Well, Thank you so much. First of all, I want to thank everyone for putting this on. I'm so grateful to have been selected. And um, Arizona is a border state, so we're I think that everyone knows where we are geographically, right at the on the Mexican border, on the border with Mexico, and between California and Mexico. And my particular district spans almost the entire border with Mexico. So my district is about the length of it along the border is about 300 kilometers, and the and it's a very mixed district. So talking about parties, I represent the Democratic Party, and here in the United States, as many people know, and I'm assuming we have a mix of viewers, but we're primarily a two-party system, no different in Arizona. So in our state, immigration is a very contentious issue. Just like the rest of America, Arizona is split almost 50-50. So we have half of our folks that are Donald Trump, half of our folks that are Joe Biden fans, and there's just very little daylight in between. So when you look at where people are on immigration, that split it's very obvious. We in the legislature, for instance, we are also split. In the Senate, we're 16-14 in the Republicans' favor, and the House, we're 31-29 in the Republicans' favor. But we have a Democratic governor. And the Republicans are always pushing for anti-immigrant legislation. We had one just last week that was then vetoed. But it's a weird mix because we also have the need for workers. Many people don't realize, and I think on the Republican side that our state and indeed our nation would have had a real decline in population had it not been for the immigration that we've been so fortunate to have over the years. And so would our economy. I mean, you look at most of the companies that are that have been founded in the United States in the past 20 years, and again, Arizona is no different. Many of them are primarily either started or run by immigrants. So it's we really need their knowledge base, and in general labor. You go anywhere in Arizona and you're going to see help wanted signs. So and that's this weird dichotomy, from my state and from my district is that you have. And my district's also split. So my district is just about 50-50 between Republicans and Democrats too. And so I'll have Republicans that are very big on the economy, and we need labor and we need free trade, and very that's kind of the origins of their party. And then you'll have the folks that and they'll vote for a Donald Trump who is not in favor of those type of things. So I think that we're trying to figure it out. I mean, we're trying to figure out how to make that work. In the United States, immigration is primarily a federal issue when it comes to the numbers of people that can come across legally and how they come across. Once they're here, however, it's usually a state issue in terms of how do we treat them. Do we go and ask for people's papers? Are we very, very intense on asking for someone's immigration status when they're applying for a job, for instance? That's usually in the state purview. And we have those pushes in our state right now of how far do we push on that kind of thing, and how far do we just sort of let folks kind of hire who they would like. If that makes any sense.
No, thank you so much. Brian, you just said that you have a 50-50 split also in your own district, and you're trying to work it out. What does that mean? How are you working it out?
Oh, yeah, that's a really good question. So it's a lot of listening. Again, I'm a Democrat. My mother actually preceded me in the legislature, and then she resigned to go to the Biden administration on the national level. And my mom was a little more left of me, and the district was different then. The district's become, more centered now. It was a very Democratic district when she represented it. and a lot of that was because of immigration, that sort of switch. A lot of it is listening. A lot of it is talking about the economy, talking about how important things are. I think that when you talk about the details of immigration, people usually are in favor of the actual immigration. But I noticed that Ms. Baum was talking about the fake news. We have a lot of that here. So we'll have, international organizations, international news organizations even, that'll come in and talk about, oh, there's a caravan coming to Arizona. They have hundreds of thousands of people and they're just going to storm the border and, you're not going to be able to do anything about it. And, lately we're starting to hear things like, the Russians are coming across. And so, Putin's sending all these people over. It's one of these, it's a weird thing. But I think going back, I think a lot of what can combat this is facts, talking about the importance of immigration, and finding easier or legal ways for folks to get here. We in America, we've got quotas from countries where we only allow a certain number from certain countries, and the quotas are really low. A lot of them were made when the world was much smaller and our needs were much smaller. I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but I know there are countries that are like very large in South America, and some of those quotas I believe are like 30,000, which is just not practical. So I think the folks there who want to come across, sometimes for humanitarian reasons, and sometimes just for economic reasons, which arguably could be humanitarian, decide to just, come across. They have many of them have family here. And the family takes them in and gets them started. And indeed, a lot of America, much like Germany, a lot of us are based on immigration. We're an immigrant nation. That's how we were founded. I mean, at some point, folks from Europe immigrated over here and started this country. And I think that, that's what makes us so strong. And I think that that's the message that I try to get across.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much. And the first question already came in, and I'm going to integrate that in a second, Larry. But before this, Brian, I would like to stay with you for a couple more questions before I then also bring in Franziska again. So over the last month or year or so, we have seen pretty high numbers of undocumented people crossing the border, and some are saying that there is a border crisis. Would you agree that there is a border crisis, or what would you say?
Yes, I would agree there's a border crisis. I think that, what that border crisis looks like, and I am switching computers right now, so just do 1 second. Okay, just one moment.
Yeah.
And okay, and then now we are.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
We lost you and can't hear you anymore.
okay, and
Yeah.
Okay, I'm so sorry about that. This has been a fun day. Okay, so I do believe we have an immigration crisis, but I think that where we differ on that, or where I differ with that from the other party, is what the solution to that is. They have drastic solutions like close the border, for instance. I don't agree. I think that we can come up with policies that, again, make it easier for folks to legally immigrate. And I think that'll take care of many of the problems. But there's no question that we don't have an ideal border situation currently.
And then I do have another question for you. And that is something which you need to explain to us. And maybe, Franziska, you can also explain it from the German side. So, Brian, your state is a border state, as you said. So obviously, people are coming right over the border and come to your state first. And so you must have more migrants than other states. Is there a federal division? Are they sent to other states? Is this organized? Is there a burden sharing? And Franziska, also on the German side, is there a burden sharing between the different states? Is there a distribution, so to say, of migrants? But first to you, Brian.
Okay.
Can we start with Ms. Baum? Because I'm having difficulties and I will be confused about. I actually see 2 iterations of myself as well.
Okay, no problem at all. Then I hand over first to Franziska, and I hope that we can solve the technical challenges in the background.
Yeah, that would be that would have been interesting to hear first how that solved in America. You've got much more experience with migration. In Germany, we do have some sort of distribution system for those who register. We say when you say asylum, so it's like it depends on where you are and where you say asylum, and then they put you in the system, and then it's distributed according to quotas that are on a federal level. But more important and most problems actually does the Dublin regulation, which says that which is on an EU level. And there it is, questions like where you say asylum first, that is where you have to stay. And we have in Germany, obviously, since we have no actual external border, nobody is first, or let's say just some really are first time in Germany and say asylum. So they usually come from somewhere else. And these are some that actually block our whole administrative system, since we are trying to then move them back from where they first said, I'm seeking asylum. And this is a real problem. And I think this is not a good solution, because I assume that we actually pay more money to get them back to Sweden. It would be much cheaper to just find a solution for them where they are at that moment. But that's a different matter. And so yeah, so there is a distribution system, but it also it always depends on where you are when you say I'm seeking asylum, and then it depends on how that is distributed. Sometimes it's only numbers. Sometimes it's really looking at what you actually need, because we have the same systems then again on the state level where we distribute them on municipalities, so that looking from there's one where they're all coming, and then we are distributing them in buses and distribute them through the municipalities. So that's how we do it.
So not so easy.
So I gathered by the answer that the question was how we distribute the people that come across in migration. Okay, great. So we are not as organized as we should be. So currently, what we've done is prioritize reuniting them with their families. So that can be an immediate family. It can be an extended family. And what that means in practice, though, is that they end up going to probably 5 or 6 cities in the U.S. Think New York, Chicago, these Los Angeles, these kind of cities. And these cities can get overwhelmed. It's not actually a great practice. I mean, humanitarianly, it's probably a good practice because you're, putting them with the people that they're close to, and it's who they want to go to. It's who they're asking or where they're asking to be settled. And different cities have different abilities to help them. I think, on one end are cities like New York, who are, spending quite a bit of money to try and settle them. There are cities, in other parts of the country that are not spending any money on it. But the needs where our country needs their labor, and where we have housing to be able to take care of them, facilitate them, are not necessarily in those cities. And that's a conversation that many of us have been having. We have cities in the United States that are kind of emptying out, if you will. Sort of the Midwest, the places that where our country used to grow, and now it's growing in the West and the South. And the folks that are coming across are primarily wanting to go to the places that are growing, that are suffering from housing shortages, for example. So, one of the things that I think that, if we had sort of a very set conversation with folks, where people decided to let's put sort of the fake news and let's put the anecdotal evidence that people always seem to take into account aside, and sit and say, like, okay, where would it be? How would we best facilitate the folks to come across? I think the answer would end up being distributing them where we need them, and there's just plenty of places that I see that would need them. Towns that are emptying out, that are begging for residents, and that just doesn't seem to be where they're going. And again, it's for their own choice, right? They want to be close to their families.
Yeah, thank you so much. Maybe we stay with this topic a little bit more before we come back to the skilled workers and how immigration of skilled workers is fostered. One of our participants, Pamela, is asking about migrants coming in, being allocated, being relocated, and maybe being sent back. Many asylum seekers or refugees come with big trauma. And sometimes it's, as Franziska, you said, it's also naive to think that they can be easily integrated and right away start to work. But they do need support systems. And as we just heard, it's not just infrastructure, the housing, and so on, but it is also soft infrastructure and giving them help and assistance. So Brian, maybe you can tell us a little bit about what happens if a person comes over the border, is a refugee, seeks asylum, definitely needs help. How does the support system kick in?
So, and yeah, this is evolving. So when this process, or when this, crisis, I suppose you could say, started, when people started coming in very large numbers seeking asylum, because this is a kind of a new thing for us. What was happening is they would just, come across and nothing, that you'd have some NGOs that might give them some, leave water stations in the desert and hope for the best. And we'd find, unfortunately, regularly, we'd find bodies in the desert. Some had been killed by drug cartels, others had, died of exposure. So, we kind of decided that wasn't going to be the way, we could continue. So we've set up these stations, throughout the southern border, and we have nonprofits that will go test them for, various, COVID, other things, give them some vaccines, this kind of stuff. And then sort of process them. And the process really is, where are you from? Do you have some family? They do a background check on them as best they can, and then find out where their family is, and then send them to that family. So it's a really quick process. We really don't take into account, any of their skill sets, or what work they could do, or what work is available, where they're going to be going. Really, the priority is to get them away from the border area. And that's mostly because the border areas don't feel like they can facilitate large numbers of people. Most of our border areas are small towns. So you talk about, these large numbers of people that they have no ability to handle them. So they send them typically to big cities.
Thank you so much. And how does it work in Germany, Franziska?
Yeah, we kind of do the same mistake. We're not checking what can they do, what are they doing, what are their skills, where can we need them, and this is especially then when we find out that on the juridical level they have no right to stay in Germany, and then we move them back or somewhere else instead of just checking what can they actually do, and is there a need, and are they actually integrated? Because most of these processes last forever. I mean, they are on the road for, I don't know, a couple of years, then they wait in Germany for a couple of years if they are allowed to stay for longer. And I think this is not fair towards the people. So it's not only a question of is where somebody coming from, but also that there are people on the road for for years, and we don't manage to just take them in and say you're a human being and you know something, and we make sure that you have all the chances to bring it in our society. And this is what makes it actually kind of tragic. But I think I mentioned it earlier. It's like most of the refugees coming from the African area arriving in Italy, for example, or in Greece. And this is a bit like the same that you just said, Brian, is a country where you have small villages on the borders or on the oceans. So they are not ready to take on so many people. And for a long time, we kind of left them alone with that matter with our Dublin regulation. And we said, oh, that's the country you put your foot on first, so there you stay. Which was a big challenge for Italy. So there's, on the EU level, we need definitely a much fairer distribution on who takes on people and supports Italy and all the countries on the borders, so that they don't have to deal with that by themselves.
And if I could add just real quickly, that we've had the same issue with Mexico. So most of the people for a long time were coming through Central America, and they were going through the fire bottom of Mexico and coming up, and most of them had no desire to stay in Mexico. They wanted to come to the United States. And so we were having that issue with Mexico for many years. People would say, like, well, why don't you just keep the people? You're the first country that they're coming to. And we do have this agreement, similar, where the first country that you go to is where you have to seek asylum. But ultimately, two things happened. One, Mexico, just really wasn't able to sustain, that level of migration. And two, people started coming in from different directions. We're now seeing a lot of Haitians, Indians, Ukrainians, Russians. We do see Russians coming through. Mexico is one of the only places that Russians can still travel to. And so they, we are seeing some of them come across too. So it's one of the like unusual things just with our geography. We're only connected to really two countries, and those, it's hard because Mexico just hasn't been able in the past to be able to sustain the number of people that wanted to come across.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And with this, I would now also come to the issue of skilled workers. There's also a question about Washington, D.C. And decision making. So we come back to this later, just as a warning note to the current migration bill. I think we need to talk about that too. But first, I want to come back to Larry's comment in our Q&A, and he's asking, and I think that is a question to both of you. It's a big question of, both of you mentioned there's a need for skilled workers. There's a definite, because of demographic change, but also because new skill sets are necessary and we have new industries. And Larry mentioned specifically the semiconductor water fabs, the modern industries. So what are your states doing to attract also these kind of migrants? Franziska, do you want to start?
I'm happy to start. I look a bit with a little bit of envy to Brian, because he can obviously decide on a state level if you hand people a working permit, no matter if they have a legal residence permit. We can't do that. This is all on a federal state level. So there are programs that we're actually running. So on the one hand, we're kind of having this restrictive regulation on asylum seekers and people here, where we're discussing if they are allowed to stay here or not. And on the other side, we're running programs where we go into different countries like Vietnam or India, where we run programs with schools there to train people to support their education, and then for them to come over to Thuringia and work here. So we have companies going to Vietnam, for example, and do talks with people who are willing to come to Germany and work here. So this is the two sides on what we're dealing at, and I can only sign what Brian said earlier. It's like we need easier ways to get legally into a country with certain, where we say this is what we expect from you to do within the next 3-4 months or whatever, and then it's fine and fair enough, and so that not all of them have to go via asylum, because that is kind of ruin our administration. When we're talking skilled workers, sometimes I have the feeling it's not only skilled workers, special skilled on semiconductors, but we are running towards a situation where we need whoever is willing and able to provide something to this society and to the economy.
And so does Thuringia have offices, state offices around the world, like in India and Brazil, where it advertises for the state, like some of the US states do in Germany, for example? Is there an active attraction policy, so to say?
Yeah, somehow these programs are like attraction programs. Yeah, I don't know if we run offices there, but it's about the chambers of commerce who kind of have their offices and use them, and our professional school education system is going out with school. We have schools in the Ukraine where we actually provide professional education programs for people who are there, and so we take them over once they're skilled, but we skill them ourselves. So it's yeah. So yes, attraction programs.
Brian, how is it in your state?
Well, so we're fortunate. I don't know how widely known it is, but we, the Taiwan Semiconductor Factory, TSMC, decided to move one of their largest facilities to Arizona, or start a new facility. It's amazing. It's a great opportunity for us. It's a ton of very high tech jobs, and obviously brings in other high tech jobs. And we actually have a lot of these kind of companies coming in, building electric trucks. We have hydrogen plants, this kind of thing. But it does beg the question, where do we get the workers for these? So we have, great universities in Arizona, and they are providing engineers, but not enough, and not in the specific type of engineering that some of these factories require. I mean, for many years, we really didn't train folks in the US with this kind of engineering. And so that's a huge challenge. And one of the other complicating things that we have in the United States in general is sort of an anti-Chinese, I'll just say that, bias when it comes to, the Communist Party of China, this kind of thing. But the problem is that, the people, in Arizona don't have this, and this is something that's just happened recently, can't tell, what type of where someone's from based on what they look like or their last name. So now we're having problems where people are trying to say, like, okay, we need to have laws that allow people to report and shut down any kind of business if we suspect that they might be a Chinese national, which is absurd, because it's, basically what you're saying is that someone that looks and sees someone that doesn't look like them can say, like, oh, I think that they might be Chinese, and so I am going to be, stop their business, stop their construction, etc. I say this because I think it's important to understand that we are having huge challenges when it comes to bringing the people here, and also making it attractive for them when they get here. No one wants to go somewhere where they don't feel like they're wanted. And I think that's sort of the challenge that I've seen, especially lately. People saying, like, well, can't we find, Americans to these jobs? But the reality is we can't. If we could, we would. But they're not as we're not trained for this kind of thing. And I'm actually have a software background. I'm a software developer. So, I've always worked in tech, my entire life. And I'm, that's one of the things I try to tell folks. It's like, look, we can start training people now for these jobs, but people have to want to be trained for these jobs. And B, it's not an overnight process. It's going to take some time and money. And in many ways, it's just easier to find people that are already doing it in other countries that want to be here and allow them to get here.
Thank you so much. And this brings us back to the question, if you are happy with your federal government, are you happy with Berlin? Are you happy with Washington? And the support they are giving you on all the different aspects you just put onto the table? Brian?
Okay, great. I'll start. No, but part of what we and I'd be interested to hear what Ms. Baum thinks about this, because she might. I'm not sure she's going to say something about the EU, but in the U.S., because our system is so split, we have our House of Representatives in the federal government is a Republican controlled. The Senate is Democratic controlled. Of course, President Biden is a Democrat. A lot of things just can't get through, and that's the complaint that I hear from both sides: is nothing can get done in Washington. Everything's deadlocked. We're constantly, there was an immigration agreement that was bipartisan and everyone was very excited about it, and then President Trump told his people to go against it, and it died. These are the problems that we're having, is that we're just not, it's not that Washington doesn't have a desire to fix the issue. They very much do. They just seem unable to.
Sounds a bit like here. We have in the EU, we have the situation that we have some very conservative countries who actually want to, a bit more nationalist, and who don't want to deal with migration at all, and that makes it difficult to find an agreement on the EU level, which is the first level that we would actually need to sort all of that. On the federal level, because some of you ask if we are happy with what they are doing, there is a little bit of there's some motion coming in. So we try to get a better regulation on the skilled worker matter, so that we make it easier for people who want to come to work here to actually come, and those who are here have now the opportunity to use the next 18 months to get skilled language course or whatever is necessary, get work, so that they can then have a permit, a residence permit. So we try to kind of do some enhancement on the federal level to support skilled workers to actually live here and work here. But we still haven't solved the whole asylum regulation, which is a big issue, and it's still not sorted. What are what we expect? What are the expectations towards those who want to migrate to Germany? If you're not skilled worker, like if you're not semiconductor engineer or something, if you're just somebody who wants to maybe learn. And also, especially for me in East Germany, the salary that is expected for those who come as a skilled worker and to live here, that they have to earn is higher than what you can actually expect to receive when you come to East Germany, what the companies are able to pay. So even though you might be here, you might have a job, and there is a company actually looking for you, but if you don't earn enough money, then you're not allowed to come on the other hand. So that is just not working, and that doesn't fit. If this doesn't fit together on the federal level, so that makes it very difficult. And I can support that. The problem with the parties, we have this same. We just have some more parties. So it's like in Germany, we have on the federal level, we have a very liberal social coalition at the moment. Then we have at the states, we have at the moment the migration ministry is in green hands, but they didn't solve the real problems at the moment on how to deal with people that we accommodate at the moment, distribute them, bring them into work and all that. So that didn't work. And then you have on the municipal level, you have a lot of still conservative heads of this district. So they don't want to change anything. They want to have it back as it was when there was nobody knocking at the door. So not all of them, I gotta say. So there's always good leaders amongst all of us, but that is the whole level party mixture that gets us back into lock all the time as well.
Ryan, you look like that you wanted to jump in a couple minutes ago, if I read your face.
And no, I mean, I was just thinking about how similar that sounds to, you know, where we are. I mean, aside from having the multiple parties, you know, we do have just this sort of push and pull within the parties of, you know, again, going people that are the pro business that are like, yes, you know, we need these workers. Otherwise, I have someone I was just talking to, he just opened a factory in Mexico, right across the border from my district, and I went to visit it. And we're looking around, and he said, this is why we need, you know, not only immigration, but also free trade. But it's his party that's also fighting against it at the same time. And, you know, he laughed about it. He's like, I know. He's like, it's my own party that's against this, but, you know, there's a lot of people that are for it. So that we have the same push and pull.
It seems to be a multifaceted challenge and also an opportunity, and it certainly cannot be solved by one actor alone. And now we talked a lot about policymakers and administrations and your responsibility. But I would assume that that is only a piece of the puzzle, right? So what I would also like to talk about with both of you is, what about non-state actors? What is the responsibility of the business sector, for example? What's the responsibility of the civil society sector? Are you working with those stakeholders, Franziska?
Well, we are a lot in contact with companies. In Thuringia, we got a lot of small and medium enterprises, a lot of industry, a lot of IT, a lot of production, but also service company, all sorts of branch, and we talk a lot with them about using the opportunities that come with migration, but they come across the same problems that we have when we look at it. So if they have somebody who's qualified and who they say, we know him, he lives around the corner, you know, he's new, we train him. He has no residence permit, he has no working permit, there's no chance. So, and that is where this is the first, and then you need then company leaders who are willing to run through the administrative jungle and find a way to help these people to come on board. We have situations where where people are sent back to their countries, although they have a job, the child is in school, they live here already for 3 years. It's just that this administrative process never has ended. And so then somebody decided, oh, they got to go back, because nobody is looking at their integration process and if they are actually already home here. And this is stories that companies hear, and this is stories that they live day for day. And then they say, I do this once, twice, maybe, but then I'm fed up. But I got to say, there's a lot of society people, a lot of people in civil society who work for a good integration process, who help with language courses, who help with education, who help with connection, making it possible to meet people and to change your approach towards people who look different, maybe. So there is a lot happening, and this is a task for the whole society as a whole.
I think I couldn't agree more. I think that we have similar things in our country. So we have a lot of NGOs that are stepping up. Sometimes they get private donations. Other times they're actually subsidized by the federal government, who will, for instance, the organizations that process the migrants as they're coming across, they're actually compensated by the federal government for each person that they process. I think the federal government gives them enough money for, the plane ticket, for the person, also their, the health screenings and all this kind of thing. But you'll have like other NGOs that out of their own pockets will go and give, the kids like a backpack. Oh, you're going to start school and you have nothing but the clothes in your back. Here's some clothes. Here's a notebook. Here's a pen. These kind of things just to get them, get them started. But I couldn't agree more that, I think that it can't be solved by one actor. I mean, you can't have, it's a huge problem, and you need to have everyone stepping forward to do this. We have the business community that frequently try to do exactly. I mean, it's like, it's so funny because this problem sounds so similar to ours. They'll find people. They find an individual person. Let's say they find them in another country, and they're like, "This is the perfect person for us." If they pay a lot of money, they can get that person. They have to pay an immigration lawyer, and there's lots and lots of hoops and paperwork to get through. But they can find that person. But if they let's say have a group of 300 people, then okay, we want these 300 people that they're going to be working in our factory. It's almost impossible to do that. So it's very, very difficult if you're a company and you don't have the workers there to get them going. But by the same token, for trade reasons, they need these factories. They need to manufacture, for instance, these the semiconductor chips here in the United States. So it's like, okay, well, it's a problem we have to solve, but no one's really stepped forward with a very good solution to solving it.
Thank you so very much. We are almost out of time, but I left one big question for the very end, and it has also been asked in the chat, and that's the transatlantic dimension. We are economically immensely interdependent and benefit from each other. Lots of German companies operating in the US and employing Americans, but also bringing Germans over and the other way around. And we also have lots of students coming from Germany, going to the US and the other way around, and also skilled workers. So Franziska, let me end with the transatlantic dimension and let me ask you, so what do we take away from this debate? Is there something we can do together?
Well, I think whenever something happens on our Earth, it always has an impact somewhere else as well. So whenever we sit here and speak, and we find something that is interesting, and I must say, I have to take this back. If we might not be able on the state level to hand out work permits, no matter if they have residence permits. So I got to check that because that sounds interesting. So I believe we need to stay in touch and do this exchange much more often. That's why the American Council in Germany and the Aspen Institute are so important to enhance this connection and to keep us all in touch. Because at the end, we are faced with all the same problems, and we can only learn from somebody else's good examples.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for everyone for putting this on, and I'm so grateful. Yes, no, I've learned a lot in this, and I think that something. Yes, Americans, in general, but Arizona specifically, we actually have. I was actually in Germany I normally go for pleasure, but I was there for work last year, I believe it was, or 2 years ago now. We opened a trade office in Frankfurt. So the state did. So we're constantly trying to enhance our trade with Germany, and we've been doing it for many, many years. But I know that in Arizona, we would really love to continue that partnership. And these kind of organizations are so crucial for that.
Well, and next time you are in Berlin, you have definitely come to Friedrichstraße and say hello. We would love to host you for an exchange. Thank you so much to both of you. I leave the hard work of summarizing all the important takeaways to Steve and hand over again to my good colleague.
Well, Stormy, thank you so much. I don't know that I'm going to do justice to pull all of the threads together, but I want to start by thanking Franziska for the plug that she put in at the very end there for the important work that you're doing at the Aspen Institute and that we're doing at the American Council on Germany. You realize through exchanges like this one how important it is to have fora for the frank and open exchange and dialogue about difficult issues. And so I want to thank both of you, Franziska and Brian, for this rich discussion. I think it was fascinating to hear where there were some commonalities, but also where there are real differences, both in terms of immigration itself and the immigration problem, the immigration challenge that each of our two countries are facing, but also the way in which there are some differences between how state legislators address the myriad challenges of immigration. I think in our work, we often look at what the common challenges are that are facing Germany and the United States. A topic like immigration makes clear that this is not exactly the same challenge. You cannot make the comparison one-to-one, but it is an opportunity to learn from different approaches. And I found it particularly interesting, to hear what you said toward the end, Brian, that with complex challenges like this, they can't be solved by one actor alone. Partners are needed at the national level, at the state level, at the local level, but also outside of politics. And so this has been, I think, just an incredibly rich and dynamic exchange. And it's been interesting to sort of eke out where there's common ground between both countries. So I would like to thank you both, Franziska and Brian. Huge thanks to both of you for making the time to engage with us to talk about this important topic. I'd also like to thank our many viewers and some really terrific questions that came from our viewers. And of course, last but by no means least, I want to thank Stormy for expertly guiding us through this conversation. This has been really, really interesting to follow, and I'm very pleased that we were able to have this opportunity. So many thanks, and I wish you a good evening in Berlin and a good rest of the day in the United States.